It's NWO Chat Radio. From the foothills of the Shenandoah, welcome to NWO Chat Radio. Your hosts, Ddraig and Protocon. Remember, you can always email or live chat from our website at nwochat.info. And now, here are your hosts, Ddraig and Protocon. NWO Radio.
Welcome to the next episode of our show. Originally it was going to be shelter, and it's still, as far as the topic goes, it's going to be shelter. But I was hoping to have a special guest this evening, but it'll probably be next week. But since you're joining us, you can contact us at NWOChat through Twitter or on our chat room. It's on nwochat.info, and hang out there and ask us questions about the show. And I've got two guest hosts. I've got Hardboild from our channel, and then Turner from Agents of Moo on Freenode has decided to join us this evening. He'll be kind of listening in and that kind of thing. So just so you know what the show is about, Turner, is basically we covered disaster-related news and topics kind of for the everyday person, because my perspective is that, you know, I'm still learning. I think a lot of us are still learning how disaster preparedness and that kind of thing. So that's the essence of the show. So I'm sure
that's good for someone like me then.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be able to fit right in. So I don't have any doubt about that. So I guess the hasn't been too many major news topics, that haven't already covered in previous shows. I guess the newest one is the solar flares, and those have been pretty active, I would say. And let's see, we've had a couple. Was it M-class solar flares? Is that right? Hardboiled?
X-class.
X-class was the most recent, but we had like
it was just 48 hours ago.
Okay, yeah, we had the M-class one, right? And then the X-class was just recently, but the X-class wasn't a direct one.
Yeah, but it was still very powerful, and it's causing flights to be redirected in the polar regions.
Huh, I didn't hear that one.
So it's... Oh, you didn't see that one?
No, I didn't.
Let me get that. Yeah, and Delta Airlines had to reroute their aircraft and a bunch of other airliners.
Yeah.
Just so they could actually operate. Solar flares can damage the nav and stuff.
Maybe I did hear about that. And solar flares can cause a lot of other issues as well with radio communications. So if you're a ham radio operator, that's a big thing to cover. So, and then let's see, what other things you found some interesting links that you had earlier about.
Going back in the past, usually, I mean, the thing about NASA is they're warning that this next solar cycle is going to be very powerful. Well, before that even, they were talking about either this solar cycle is not going to happen, or it's going to be being like another ice age. Like, either the sun's going to stay asleep because we had the most non-sunspots on record. It was like 840 days straight without having a sunspot, which is like the record. And all of a sudden, it just woke up. So that probably indicates that we might be in for another solar max.
Because it seems like it's like just sorry to cut you off there, but it was like it's already January and we're having seemingly pretty active sun for the last week or so, right?
Yes. I mean, we're in the early stages of the the upper level of the solar cycle that it's currently in. I think it's solar cycle 24.
Solar cycle 24. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's supposed to climax or start to climax next year, and if we already have X flares like a whole year in advance, that's pretty serious stuff right there. I mean, this looking at data like solar data and stuff.
Right.
It's similar to the Carrington event. Carrington event, had a gradual increase and ended with a massive flare. And this is back in, people who don't know what the Carrington event was, is a giant solar storm that hit the planet back in 1859.
Yeah, because I didn't know about that either till you brought it up earlier.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know it even happened. I mean, it's ancient history. It's almost 200 years ago, if you think like 40 years ahead. But
yeah, it was like about 150 odd years ago.
Yeah, at that time we didn't have anywhere near this kind of technology, and back then we were like burning out telegraph posts or something.
Yes. I mean, this storm was so big and powerful that like the astronomers who observed this, the massive CME that came from the sun, it traveled to the Earth in 18 hours. It's very rare because usually it takes 3 to 4 days. So this shows that we don't really understand how the sun and its CMEs work in comparison to how long it takes for its energy to reach us. Because like 18 hours that doesn't give much warning to really prepare people if something were to hit.
That's pretty fast. And that's the thing.
Normal ones take
CME,
about 5 days.
Isn't, you see those shows on like Discovery Channel and stuff, right? It's like the disaster of the apocalypse or whatever. Isn't a CME, like a direct hit from a CME, considered one of those?
Yes, it is. Especially if the magnetosphere were to shut down or be weakened. I mean, the only thing keeping us from dying literally is the magnetosphere, which is connected to our magnetic poles and the Earth's core.
Right.
And according to this article that you just posted in the channel there, they don't fully understand how it works, but it seems like the even-numbered CME solar cycles, the CMEs actually, when they hit, they breach the magnetosphere, and it's like it hits. Whereas it's like they thought it would strengthen the magnetic field, it actually puts a hole through it, which is worse.
Yeah, that's not very good. So it's basically like a EMP is the effects you would have. And,
you look up the definition of the EMP, it's pretty much, it says something caused by a nuclear weapon or a major solar event. So,
yeah, so those that are listening that don't know what an EMP is, it's short for electromagnetic pulse, basically. It's usually caused by a huge explosion, and it basically sends a cascade of electrons from one atom to the other atom, knocking electrons off, and then essentially once it's completed the cascade down to our level, because we're talking a detonation in the upper atmosphere, it completely distorts electronics and can basically make things blow up. So unless it's protected like in a Faraday cage or, I guess a full metal container or whatever, you're going to lose some crap. Yeah, I mean, even those, vacuum tubes and stuff, that's what they were using when they discovered EMP, though. And initially, I think the first EMP was discovered when they were doing their nuclear atomic bomb tests in the Pacific, and they did an airburst, and 400 miles away in Hawaii, they were having issues with their communications.
Oh. Yeah, you're talking about the upper atmosphere nuclear test.
Right.
If they did those today, that would do serious damage if they did those tests today.
Yeah, I mean, well, not even, just imagine, if some foreign country wanted to launch an attack, that's the first thing that they, I would imagine that's the first thing that they want to do if they were going to attack the U.S. Be EMPs and then take out satellites.
if it's detonated low Earth orbit, it's gonna satellites will just go away. It's probably evaporate because like in space it's a little bit different. The atmosphere is thinner. I mean, it's still part of the atmosphere. The low Earth orbit. It's probably just gonna tear apart satellites for hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, and then on top of that, you have an EMP that's pretty much just gonna go further than it would on the Earth.
Nukes actually, like if you were to detonate a nuke in space, there's nothing for it to resist against. So it really wouldn't do a whole lot of damage. It just keep expanding. There's no, I think there's no sound and no particles. So a shock wave, I don't think a shock wave in space would be as bad as it would be if it was in an atmosphere. So, I imagine some of the lower orbiting satellites would be messed up, but the higher ones, I don't know what the GPS ones and stuff. Those are the ones I'm thinking of.
Those are the low Earth ones. Well, speaking of satellites, actually, like back in 2003, there was a humongous solar flare. It wasn't pointed toward us. It was similar to the Carrington event, but like the solar cycle itself wasn't. But it was just like a kind of a random, humongous solar flare that popped out of nowhere. It was an X24 plus because they couldn't figure out how big it was because what's that?
I was thinking, isn't 2003 when the whole East Coast lost its power?
Yes, and they blamed it on a tree branch.
Something like that. I wonder what that was all about.
Well, not just the whole East Coast, it was the whole northeast region of Canada on down to New York and Virginia. It lost power for a week or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we lost power, but I lost power. Or no, I didn't lose power, but I was actually playing an online game and said to someone what's going on, and they were actually on the phone to their mother who had their kids there in New York as it was happening. And the first thing I said to them is like, because the news was talking about how people usually end up sleeping on the streets when this happens. I'm like, tell them to find a hotel and get into it now. And actually, as that person was talking, they were actually right outside a Marriott hotel, so they got to sleep there for the night instead of on the street.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was pretty kind of. I guess I was kind of surprised myself by how quickly I thought of like that connection. But
it's good survival.
Yeah.
I mean, the blackouts in the 70s in New York were far more worse than the ones in 2003, but that's because people knew that power might come back. But can you imagine the streets if the power wasn't going to come back or no one knew what happened?
Yeah, or like, if it... I mean, I wonder how long it would have been before people would have been starting to question what was going on if the power didn't come back on for more than like a day or two.
Well, that's the beginning of a collapse right there.
Yeah.
Once the grid doesn't come back or can't come back, at least without major repair.
Right.
Anything can happen between the time.
And then you got to think about all the food that would spoil in the supermarkets.
Yes.
Because if everyone's at home, listening to the radio, and they're all saying, "Don't go outside, you can't go outside," kind of thing, and the power's still out for weeks, all that food's going to spoil. So even if people got to the grocery store to loot it, it's all going to be spoiled anyway. At least the non-fake stuff.
Yeah, going back on the looters, a lot of the survivalists that they claim they're going to hit the supermarkets the minute like shit hits the fan. They're going to go in there packing up their guns, and you're going to have all these people if they don't have guns. And they're going to think, like, I don't know, people have this mentality that looters are like these, like Katrina, for example. I'm like, well, we're going to have these, like, survivalists who are even worse looters than just the normal people. And they could be shooting people to steal the food they're looting. Looters looting looters,
Yeah.
And I know people like that.
that kind of.
They even said it themselves, man.
That's one thing that I wonder about. It's like, if you're a prepper and you've got a good month's worth of supply of food, or have a year's worth or whatever, I would say that you need to go out there and pretend you're grabbing food. If you're known in the community, or if you've got a small community, otherwise people are going to start asking questions. And then otherwise you'll be tipping them off if you've got a big store and that you're actually fine.
Oh, yeah. Especially when they get a big mob going, like when the police get together. They form a little, bandit group.
Yeah, that's exactly what my next mention was going to be. That kind of scares you, because they're probably the most trained, the most well versed in weapons and that kind of thing, and tactics, because they've been militarized last couple years.
Decade.
That they'd turn into basically a roaming gang.
Yeah, well, they are. Cops are pretty much a gang. I mean, you've heard about how good they are with radios. I mean, once this system collapses, it's going to go to hell. I mean, police just won't know what to do, and then the only thing that can happen is resort to gang mentality.
Yeah, hopefully, you've got upstanding police officers and stuff. I'm sure that, that you'll have groups that will refuse to do that kind of thing, and then you'll have the not-so-good cops that will just, well, I've got to think about myself, my family, which, that's an understandable mentality, but to do it at the expense of someone else, I have a problem with that.
I mean, cops, like, martial law would be a dream to them, but if, like, a Katrina event happened or not globally, but let's say nationally, and the grid's down, they can't get their normal phone system working. Like most of these officers, they won't even know how to coordinate with the officials anymore. They might just go off in their own charades.
Yeah, that would be pretty hilarious because, I mean, I've worked with local police officers and their equipment, and, they lose connectivity to their computer and they don't know what the heck to do. So,
well,
I mean,
that's what happens when you have a compartmentalized force like that. If it's so compartmentalized, no one knows what the other guy does. I mean, it's not like the Navy where you have like a warper, especially if someone dies on that ship you're on, you gotta be able to take up their job. I mean, they don't have that mentality. They're just kind of like, oh, the IT guy's the IT guy.
Yeah, they
if
don't
the IT guy dies,
cross-train.
what do you want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they don't at all. Which none of the civilians do that.
Right. But, the funny thing is, I've seen a couple things online that someone mentioned, what is an IT guy going to do during the apocalypse kind of thing. I'm an IT guy. It's like, I've got other skills besides, IT work. But that's important, that you build up skills, build up different things, learn different things. And that's kind of like, with our topic, shelter, one of the things that I've wanted to do for a while was to build, they call it a cob house, and that's C-O-B. It's basically, it's kind of like an Old English building style that's basically a mixture of sand, clay, and straw or hay. Mostly straw, and you mix it up into a ball and you just pile it up into walls, and then you can shape it and form it into a house. And that was initially what I was hoping to do, but we ended up buying a house instead. It's a great place anyway, so I'm pretty happy where we're at, but sometimes you can't find a good shelter or a good home.
Well, that's the other subject I wanted to get into. A lot of these people, like, they have like their nice land, they got a nice place, but like I'm wondering if if that place would become compromised, they just say, "Oh, I'll run out to the woods." And I'm like, "What are you gonna do after that? You gonna build a new shelter?" It's like, "Well, yeah, I will." And it's like, "Do you know how?"
Yeah,
and they have no clue. They don't
right.
know. Yeah.
And they haven't gone out to practice any of this. I've actually, for like the last week or so, really had an urge just to go out to my backyard and put a tent up and see if I can sleep overnight outside, just for the hell of it, which is kind of funny.
Well, yeah,
but
sleeping outside is different than indoor sleeping.
Yeah.
Even in like the most comfortable conditions.
Yeah. I think what did it was I went to the Army surplus store and ended up getting like a 8-foot by 8-foot cargo netting kind of thing. It's gonna make like a little lean-to bivouac kind of whatever you call them.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Get a tarp.
Yeah.
Some tubes.
Yeah. Do something like that.
You gotta learn to keep the bugs out too.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty cold right now. It's like 30 degrees, so bugs are not too much of an issue.
Cold out.
Yeah, it's freezing.
It's not that cold. Not at all. Not as cold as here. But,
it's actually been pretty warm the last couple of days. It was like 60s, 70s. It's pretty crazy. Strange weather.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Like they're having snow droughts on the West Coast.
Snow droughts.
And
I thought they just got hit with like a blizzard in Washington State, though.
Well, they might have, but the California Sierra Nevada region has snow drought. Texas had a drought that's killed millions of trees. I mean, there's some parts that are just having a huge storm once in a while, but it's still like their yearly snowfall and rainfall is not very. It's not high. It's like record lows everywhere. And like on top of that, these record lows of this and that, and just environmental changes, including all the solar flares and the grid going down. I mean.
Right.
You got all these mass animal die-offs that are happening. Like birds, dolphins.
Is it because of the solar flare?
Well, I don't know. It could be many factors. It could be the magnetic poles are shifting.
Yeah, that's.
And I mean, these animals, they have compasses in their brain. That's how they know which way they're going. That's how they migrate. And if the magnetic pole is shifting north or south, more like the North Pole is shifting south, and it's moving faster and faster, and it's actually becoming chaotic. It could be driving these animals like crazy.
Didn't I see something that the magnetic pole did shift recently?
It is shifting. It's accelerating.
It's like shifted into Russia or something?
It is. It's moving. It's moving at a steady pace. It's accelerating.
Pretty interesting. I wonder if it'll be like a gradual acceleration to a point, and then it'll just like completely flip. Like when you're playing with magnets.
Yeah.
And this is separate from the solar activity, or is it all connected?
I imagine it's all connected, but it's hard to say.
I mean, in theory it could be connected, but there's no
That's if you even believe in polar shifts.
Well, they happen. You could find it, like archaeology, geology. They look at volcanic rocks that cool. They look at metals. They look at pottery. I mean, there's a certain scientific term for it, but I forgot. But there's this Nova documentary all about that, about the polar shift and like magnetic poles shifting and the effects on the world. And they actually found this volcanic area in I think it was Washington State or Idaho, and they were taking samples from these rocks during the last polar shift that happened pretty recently, and it showed that the poles were shifting like 6 degrees an hour or something ridiculous. As the lava was cooling, the poles were shifting like a quarter of a degree or something like that.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty scary too if you think about it.
I wonder if that's why that guy, like crashed his ship off the coast of Italy.
Possibly had outdated maps.
His compass is messed up.
Yeah, he had an out-of-date map that wasn't. I mean, if your map isn't within 2 years, you're definitely going to crash because the amount that the magnetic north has moved is very, very big, especially when it comes to navigation. But yeah, these animals are dying. I mean, 22 dolphins they beached in Cape Cod in New England, and apparently it's the second time this has happened. I mean, this is dolphins just beaching up on the beach, perfectly healthy dolphins just dying, and like I don't know, the scientists like determined that the seals died from something linked to influenza virus, similar to the one in the birds that they've never been seen before in seals. So they're trying to blame it on a virus that's never been seen before in seals, but there's no evidence for it.
Right.
And then these fish,
seals got bird flu? Is that what you're saying?
That's what this article says.
Okay.
Want me to send you it?
Yeah, sure.
If you guys hear something like poker tips, they're actually me. I'm fiddling with bottle caps. I probably should stop.
It's okay.
But,
And on top of all that, man, there's a whale that beached in Ocean City.
in New Jersey? Or
Atlantic City.
Okay. Yeah.
Near Atlantic City. Yeah, this whale just died. And, like, it was apparently in really good health. And then we go over to New Zealand, right? They had 33 whales just like beach today or this morning.
You weren't kidding. This is what's this, AP, and it is talking about they're linking the seal deaths to an influenza-like virus that's normally seen in birds, but never before seen in seals.
Yes. So it's a new virus, if it is one. It's a new species, that's for sure.
Seal flu. Nice.
So how the hell does that happen?
You told me.
I don't know, it might be a cover-up. Some scientists don't know what the hell it is, or they probably know what it is, or just too afraid to tell us or something. I mean, it could be that there's some shifts coming. I mean, the Mayans, they did pick that last year. I mean, it wasn't like on that date shit's going to hit the fan, but they said, hey, we're entering an age of transition into the next age, which will last about, I don't know, I think it was like 160 years. And it could be it's related to all this Earth changes that are just happening now. But
if someone told me seal flu was going to happen 10 years ago, I would have called them a liar.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm guessing that's the same one that guy did those whatchamacallits, right? The testing on those ferrets to make it airborne.
What?
Did you hear about? Yeah, that guy that researcher.
They haven't. That guy hasn't proven. There's like no evidence that thing even exists. It was just kind of an article that popped out of nowhere.
Well, no,
scientific.
He was getting ready to publish the results, and they stopped him from doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he basically made it the worst possible, virus on the face of the earth. Kills like 90% of the people, and is airborne.
Well, that's if it spreads. I mean,
Right.
in modern days, like today, unless the grid goes down, I mean, a virus like that wouldn't be that bad. But if the grid does go down, like that virus would be devastating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, that's a perfect virus to spread during a collapse. Which, like, people think they're going to spread it, like, right now. It's not going to work. I mean, our world is just too quick. By the time someone has the symptoms, they're not even going to be in public. They're going to be way sick and in bed. In order to spread it, you have to cough on somebody or spread it somehow.
Right. Yeah. And that's my thing. It's like
virus.
Like once they figure out who's had an outbreak, there's no way for them to stop it because it's already spread. Because it spreads before it actually shows symptoms.
Yes. But it's easier to catch though.
Have you seen the movie Contagion?
Yes.
I watched that like last week or whatever. That freaked me out. It's like, okay, it's enough of those movies for a little while.
They're okay. I mean, well, I'm just saying though, like if the grid were to go down, an event like that would be pretty bad, along with everything else, food shortages, viruses, because people will be in close proximity to each other with no medical facilities with modern decontamination equipment and all sorts of other stuff.
Right.
Plus, vaccines and meds would be pretty much gone.
And I think you're pretty much better staying in your own home anyway. At that point.
Eventually you're gonna get staying at home is just eventually gonna get you killed. This is the true fact about it all. If you stay at one place too long in a collapse, they're gonna come and get you.
Well, I'm thinking like in an outbreak kind of a thing. If there's a mass sickness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's probably going to happen in reality if a big outbreak like that happens, people start killing people who are infected. Which is where the zombie media thing comes from, with all these zombie movies and video games. It's making us desensitized to killing sick people. So you can think of a major virus breaking loose, and these people are infected in major population centers. They could all be in big groups, and then you got these gun-ho motherfuckers, and shooting these people who are infected.
Yeah.
They have no remorse, or they're narcissists. I mean, they're out there.
Yeah, I enjoy a good zombie movie, but when you start saying, okay, I'm gonna prep for the apocalypse because I believe a zombie invasion's gonna happen, it gets a bit much.
Yeah, but it's just a metaphor for sick people. It just gives people desensitized to killing people who are infected. That's pretty much the premise for all zombie movies.
Yeah, that's I never really thought about it that way.
I'm just saying.
More predictive programming, yes.
It is. So it gets people used to killing mass amounts of sick people. It desensitizes them.
Mars brought it up. Oh, good point. That if it's airborne, it says, what does it say? So if they wanted to spread it and it was airborne, think about 20 jets flying over the country, dropping a deadly virus on the people.
Well, the virus would die before it hit the ground, unless they're flying it very low.
Yeah, unless it was like
well, you would have to weaponize it.
Yeah, you'd have to weaponize it also.
Wasn't there an article somewhere about militarization of bird flu or something? Let me go see if I can find it.
Yeah, there was
the bird
one.
Flu thing,
that was
around for decades.
Well, that was the one with the ferrets, because it was the Department of Defense paying for research to figure out how it would become. What's the word? Contagious.
More virulent?
More virulent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the only thing left to do would be to nuke it.
Well, these viruses have never been seen before, and that type of deaths, 100% kill ratio has never been found in a virus. I mean, they found in chemical weapons and biological weapons, but even those.
So
a lot of this is fear-mongering.
Yeah, so if, let's say there is a contagious outbreak, when you need to take shelter, what should you do? Because I was thinking about this today, it's I was thinking about the whole, anthrax scare, and they're telling everyone to go buy duct tape and plastic sheeting and stuff like that. And
that's not going to defend against anthrax at all.
Right, and I was
transmitted.
I was thinking, it's wouldn't you want fresh air? I mean, why would you want to breathe stale air? Especially if someone in your house is sick. You'd be just re-inhaling all of that bad air anyway. Unless the envelope of the house is porous enough to let in enough fresher air. I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't seem like such a great idea.
Could have an effect on your health. I mean, in the event of a collapse and a freaking humongous outbreak, there's probably going to be fires burning everywhere, and probably human bodies burning too. So maybe your air in their house probably going to be a lot cleaner than the air outside the local area. But
right.
I'm just saying.
So.
But I mean, the place you want to be is in the desert somewhere, where it's, dry, hot climate. A lot of flu viruses thrive in A lot of cold and flu viruses thrive in very wet and humid environments. So, it's something to think about.
Right. So, do we have any updates on what's going on with Iran? I think the last I heard was the EU voted for sanctions or oil embargo or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, they were going to do it later on, but Iran decided that they're just going to cut them off early. So Europe's going to lose about 20% of its oil supply. And you know, they can't attack them over that because they're going to cut them off anyways. It's a free market. You know, they could cut off whatever they want. They want to sell a product to somebody. They have all the right.
Yeah, like the story says that India is going to do whatever it takes to buy their oil from Iran, because they get about 12% of their oil from Iran.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Didn't China say they were doing the same thing?
Yeah.
So if they block the strait or put an embargo on China, why? Or I'm sorry, on Iran. It's going to tick China off.
It's going to put a dividing line right down the middle. You know, everyone else wants to trade with them will continue to do so.
Well,
and everyone else.
The big divide is people are supporting the Arab oil traders over the Persian ones.
Right.
And it's something that's been going on for a while. The Saudis, for example, the Kuwaitis, Bahrainis, you know, Qataris. Like, for whatever reason, we're taking the side of those guys with the EU and NATO. So, I mean, hopefully nothing happens in that region, because if it does, the whole place is going to light on fire. I mean, the current world economy situation will not survive. There will be a humongous setback.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be pretty ridiculous. And, you know, there's like some weird internet rumor that they're sending the USS Enterprise to that region so that they can, you know, have some false flag attack on it or something stupid like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just telling you now, like, a losing aircraft carrier won't be anywhere compared to what would happen economically to the world if that region does catch on fire.
Right.
So, and we're talking nations will starve to death. There's nations that rely on that trade route. And all the oil there, especially, and all the tankers worldwide, especially Europe, where they import about 40% of their food now, because the EU regulations have made growing farms and cucumbers pretty much impossible. Unless it's a freaking curbed cucumber or something ridiculous.
Yeah, we grow.
I mean, just an example,
here.
but yeah, you can't do that in Europe. Well, some places you can, but maybe Norway or something. But
it's pretty difficult if you're in a city, but you can get like just basically find any flat space around and put up a garden. It's one of the best ways to do it.
In Europe, they have so many regulations and they have inspectors everywhere, government agents. They'll snitch you out. Hey, this guy's growing a farm, or he has his own farm, or a garden. They consider a garden a farm if you even have one vegetable plant in it. And they'll burn your vegetable garden and throw you in a cellar for like maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
Even if you're on welfare, you try being self-sustaining in a socialist community like that, you're done. Kind of like what happened in the States recently, and I think it was Detroit, where they threw that lady in jail for growing a garden, and she was collecting rainwater too. You know, that's shit that they do in Europe.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I think she won that though. Some busybody neighbor didn't like her growing anything in the front yard.
You win that in the States. I mean, there's still the Constitution, and we do have, you know, human rights, but in Europe, you try that, or someplace like China, good luck.
Oh.
So I mean, people like to diss how bad the U.S. is, but they don't realize how bad their own place is until they actually go outside.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I was thinking about that today, you know, about like what brought me, or got me interested in this, and I've always been interested in it since I was a young kid, but traveling to Africa and just seeing what they've got there. They want to, when you, like, I went to Nairobi, and Nairobi has the biggest slum in the world. It's got like a couple million people in it. And, it's a pretty horrible place, People don't have food, they don't have any clean water or anything like that, and they live in these little metal shacks. And they're, I think I can remember someone mentioning or relating a story to me. It's like, why do you live in these metal shacks? And they said, well, we want to be more like the West. And, the West lives in nice houses and stuff. And so they thought that a metal shack was much more modern, I guess, than a dirt hovel, a dirt home. And
yes.
It's funny because the dirt home is a lot cooler. It's a lot easier to maintain. It's a lot easier to repair. It's cheaper. It's a lot more comfortable. And so I saw that firsthand, and it's like that people in the U.S. don't understand that because they don't see that with their own eyes.
Oh yeah. That's pretty common throughout most developing countries right now. I mean, yeah.
I think I remember hearing a statistic that people live and die within a 50-mile radius of where they're born, like 80% of the population. So this 80% of the population never travel outside that 50-mile radius where they were originally born.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there's a lot of people who live in like San Diego or Los Angeles, and they'll go to Mexico for like maybe a day. And I'll talk about how bad Mexico is right now. The whole Mexico drug war and all the black market stuff going on there. And militia's taking over. And they'll say, oh, there's no violence there. There's nothing happening. Even though it's the most vile place on the planet right now. Like 10 beheadings an hour.
It's more violent than Afghanistan is what I heard most recently.
One state I think Mexico has 32 states or something. Like, one state next to the border was more violent in 1 month than all year in Afghanistan. So, I mean, about 14,000 people have died in the past 3.5 months in Mexico.
I'm just kind of wondering how long it's going to be before something like, that occurs in Greece. It's like, how long are the Greek people going to put up with
they won't
the
be like
crap?
That.
I mean,
That's
I know they like their their government debt and all this other stuff. It seems like the EU's just throwing more money at them, and they're turning around buying military equipment instead of trying to save their country.
Well, a place like that won't get that violent. It's the reason why Mexico is so violent is because that's just their culture. In Mexico, shooting someone in the head is not that bad of a way to die compared to other ways to kill each other.
Yeah, but how did it become that culture?
It's just been that way.
But you don't think other societies have the potential to deteriorate to the point where they do that as well?
Maybe in a couple hundred years, like Mexico has, but
which is really why the current situation is dangerous. The current economic situation.
I mean, you compare the anarchists in Europe, like, to the drug cartels, and it's just like, oranges and guns. It's like comparing Pakistan to like a place like Morocco or something.
It doesn't. They don't compare, but I've wondered that too. Is why does it seem that Mexico is more violent and stuff? And I think it's obvious that it's a country in collapse of its own kind of thing. Rule of law is failing there, and that's probably a good example for what it could be like here if rule of law failed. You end up with the SWAT teams and stuff becoming the raiders and raiding people's homes and taking things from them, and then. But I also wonder about the Mexican culture as a whole, and like thinking back to when the conquistadors were there and stuff, and they did some pretty bad stuff, but we're just thinking about how they used to play like soccer with the heads of their enemies or something like that. They'd play like they'd play an early version of soccer, and I think it was the winning team or the losing team was killed, sacrificed. I mean, it's pretty just strange.
And that's like Mesoamerica right there. But fast forward to today, and they put people in like barrels of diesel fuel and light them on fire and let them slowly burn to death. I mean, that's probably the worst way to burn alive, because diesel burns slow. They'll cut your body apart while, piece by piece, while they, do some naughty stuff to your wife and kids.
What was the other?
Their body out in broad daylight.
Yeah, they dumped like 20 bodies in the middle of the road or something.
67 bodies.
That was the fun.
All blunt injuries.
Dang.
All blunt object deaths. They was beating the shit out of. Like literally, just like broken bones, pounded to death. None of them died from gunshot or any other way. They all just got killed by blunt, force.
Right.
Blunt force death, and it's pretty messed up.
So if you have a house and everything, shelter-wise, what would be the best way to defend it? I mean, you'd have to defend it at least until you could escape from something.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. There's tons of factors. You can't just have. I mean, you could if you had enough resources and manpower. You could literally survive anywhere, like, and still protect your land. But you still got to defend against nature. You got to defend against the human factor. You got to defend against yourself and the unknown factor. And the unknown factor would be like, like say in Nevada, Lake Lohanton, say that returns. Your freaking land's underwater now.
Right.
There's other factors like volcanoes and other crazy stuff. So like, first you want to do is like, I mean, you might live remote right now, but once, like, say the grid goes down, the cities eventually start to deteriorate, and they're going to start going to the rural areas in mobs and gangs and eventually be an organized group, and just start looting the rural people. I mean, eventually, if you're too close to a city, you're just going to get looted. And all the main roads, all along them, they're going to have gangs on, like, a mile long from, like, left to right, going down that road.
I've noticed I'm kind of in a rural area, that the actual town part of my county is maybe about 20,000 people, and the rest of the county is about 20. So you're looking at about 40 to 50,000 people in our entire county. And I've noticed that crime's kind of spread out to the more rural areas, and it just seems like it's more of a spike in robberies and that kind of thing. So, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Children of Men, but that guy, was it Michael Caine? The character Michael Caine plays lives out in the middle of nowhere, and his disguise just road and stuff. That's kind of what I think of when I think of my place. It's like, I wonder how I could disguise my road so that no one realized that there was
big too.
Yeah.
And deception too. Like, you could build a fake house and make it look like it's a real house and have your real one underground, underneath it or something.
Yeah, was the other one I was thinking of is that, I remember someone saying, was that, like, if your neighbors have been raided or something, or they're in the process of being raided, like, bust up some of your windows and chuck some of your stuff out front like it's already been looted, so that they don't even bother coming in.
That's what you're going to have to do, man. There's going to be so many people just looting, you won't even believe it. And they're all going to be armed, and they're all going to be crazy. Like, these teen mobs, they'll, like, move in droves of hundreds and just beat the crap out of random people. And kill homeless people for sport. If they're doing that now, what do you think they'll do during a collapse?
Yeah, and that's what it gets kind of scary. Those things are like really insane. It seems like it's Philadelphia or Baltimore all the time, though, which is unfortunate.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it sure is everywhere, but it's almost whenever I see them, it's like Philadelphia or something going on there.
You got mobs, like these teens, like up to 8 of them, killing like a 14-year-old, like just brutally killing them, and you got these like brothers killing their own mother, like group of 3. It's pretty fucked up.
Did you hear about what was it, it was Philadelphia again, an old man on his bicycle was beaten up and yanked off his bicycle and beaten up, and he ended up shooting 2 kids. One died and the other was in the hospital, and the third one ran away. I
saw that.
Front page Reddit.
Was it? Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I got there.
Okay. That must have been where I saw it then, too.
Yeah, he got off no charges.
Right, because I guess it's considered that they removed him from his personal property.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like some castle defense law, something like that.
Yes, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but going back to the survival, protecting your land, you gotta look at the factors of being very remote. Like, you gotta be in a place where no one's just gonna waste no one's gonna waste their resources or manpower or even bother looking out there. Like somewhere out in the middle of, the Midwest somewhere, or the West. Because these metro areas, they might seem small to you, but they're actually not that small compared to like places out in the West.
Right.
Where you literally have to travel 500 miles before you even hit another city or something. Or even longer, like 600 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Like someplace in Idaho, down in Nevada.
I think if you're sheltering in a city, I would imagine, just trying to bunker into your own place. There's plenty of places that other people would raid, but if you've got a place to hide, like in an old warehouse or something, that's not going to be, no one's going to bother going to it because no one goes to it now, kind of thing. Holding out there, and then once everyone's evacuated or left the city, or there's barely anyone left, I think that might be a viable option too. Because you've got all those resources and things that you can pull from. There'll be stores, whatever. Imagine, not everything's going to get raided completely, but you can probably pick up some things. Go to the rooftop of a skyscraper and build a little fort up there. I imagine no one's going to even think about going on the roof of a building.
Actually, the best defense in an urban environment is getting a warehouse that's kind of like built into a building already that can't light on fire very easily. Warehouses, especially those older like industrial ones that have like the floors on top. You could easily build one of those into a fortress and put a fence around it.
I think it was a TV show, The Colony. I think their first episode was in a warehouse.
Yep, that's a perfect example right there.
Yeah, I remember watching that. That's pretty good. Pretty entertaining.
Very good show.
Yeah. Yeah, so, thinking about things like shelter for me, I've got my house and I feel pretty secure in it for the most part, but I'm just thinking I'm just thinking about if I was at work and having to get home kind of thing, I'd probably have to build something if I got stuck outside.
Yep. That's why I told you to get rid of those power tools and start buying some hand tools.
Yeah, and I've got some hand tools, but
Well, that's the problem. If the grid goes down, I mean, you might have a generator, but are you really going to use the gas you have and the generator you have just to do some work when you can just do it by hand and save that?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to run your ham operator center. You know, you're going to need to send out a message someday.
Right. I'd rather use the radio or the generator on the radio side of things as opposed to the power tools, but it depended on the situation as well. Like if I was building a barricade that needed to go up pretty dang quick or something like that, then maybe I'd use power tools.
Well,
but I'm hoping to be able to get solar.
Barricade.
Yeah.
The area you're living in is one of the worst places, probably. Well, not the worst. Probably the worst places are like New York on down to Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, we're close to the mountains here. We're pretty rural. Kind of like 2 hours from DC. You know, everything's relocating to this area.
Road? How close is the nearest road?
The nearest road to my house?
Road.
Main road?
Like the main highway.
Like, maybe 5 miles away.
Yeah, you might be good, but I'm just saying, like, does that road go directly to a city or a urban center?
Well, one of them does. I mean, I can go in 2 different directions and get to town. One of them's like a 4-lane road.
Well, eventually you're going to get bounded.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But,
I'm in a
but
pretty...
depending on how far away you live is going to depend on that.
Yeah. I think I'm in a pretty decent... I mean, I guess I'm on a more traveled road, more traveled back road. The subdivision is, but, you know, I'm in the back of the subdivision, so there's plenty of other houses that people would get to first. And, you know, if everyone in our neighborhood pulled together, there's only 3 entrances. You know, you could probably cut that down to 2 entrances into the whole subdivision, and you'd have to barricade.
True. I mean, you probably do live in a great place for that. But I'm just saying, though, like, you know, after a year, you know, say the collapse happens or whatever, you're going to have probably a new, like, organization that's going to start acting like its own country, maybe. And it's going to start going house to house, you know, center to center. It's going to start enforcing its own rules.
Right.
And it could eventually show up to your doorstep, and they might not be the best people.
Right.
And you're eventually going to have to retreat to a more remote place.
Yeah, and you know, I've got a possible backup location, but it also depends on what that situation is at that location as well. I mean, it's another backwoodsy kind of place, and it's, you know, 5-10 miles off of a more traveled road again, more than the one that I'm on. So it all depends on how you assess the situation and what you're comfortable with, I would say. But you know, you're gonna. This is the thing. I think a lot of people forget about. They try to be like the lone gunman, the Rambo or whatever. But I think that if that's the case, then you know, you're probably, if you don't have good relationships with your neighbors, then chances are that they might, you know, they may not become good neighbors after something bad happens. But you need a network of friends.
That's another factor.
Stuff.
Hopefully you could trust them. That's what this is saying, though. You probably could trust your family in some cases, but can you trust your neighbors? And you might trust your neighbors now, but you might not have seen a side of them that will come out during the collapse. Which is something I tell a lot of survivalists. I'm saying, do you really trust them? And they're saying, oh yeah, I do. They're good people. You know, they're just like me. I was like, well, did they listen to Alex Jones or something? And they're like, no, they don't listen to conspiracy stuff. I mean, it's like, oh, I'm not saying that's a good trait to have. I'm saying, like, these people probably don't have the same mindset you do on it. Right. They're not seeing it the same way.
Right.
They can see you as a threat.
Right. It's just about being informed, you know, as like, how informed are they, you know, or they listen to what the mainstream, you know, corporate news tells them, or do they seek it out for themselves? Do they rely on others to give it to them?
It's the personality of the person you're looking for. Because if they're not the type of personality that will kind of doubt someone who has authority at some point, then they're more likely to join a mob. And then you know who they'll be going after, right? They'll be going after the Patriots, you know, the survivalists, because they'll be hunted down like for sport, because they're the ones with all the good stuff, you know. They got all stored up in one little shack somewhere. You know, they can send 100 people at that. You can lose a few people. They'll get it. I mean, are you ready to defend your house against a few hundred people in the worst case scenario?
Well, I mean, if it's a few hundred people, then chances are you're going to have an evacuation plan.
Yeah,
you know, a way to escape. Yeah.
Unless you're freaking shy on fat or something.
Yeah, and you know, you prepare yourself physically and stuff like that, or you know, you've got like 3 or 4 people that can help defend the house, and or wherever you're at. It's hard to say, you know, an unskilled person and how many people they could hold off, but you know, that's where, you know, when you're doing, if you've got your own place already and you've got your shelter, it's where your security comes in, and, you know, putting up like detectors and those kinds of things.
Yeah, but here's the problem: like, there's motion detectors. If you have a group of people coming after you and they go off, you've already failed, because you need a more long-range detection system, and you need more land. Or do you have a neighborhood watch or some sort if you have a community?
Yeah, we don't have a neighborhood watch or anything, but ideally, if, let's say, you know, rule of laws collapsed, you know, through whatever means, whether that's a EMP, a war, who knows. Basically, I would hope that the subdivision would come together and work as a team, and then we would have, you know, people out front with radios, radioing back to a central location kind of thing, to get, you know, situation reports, you know, to send out the next patrol or those kinds of things, you know. We do butt up to like a pretty big woods area, so, you know, if we were going to get attacked, that's going to be our weak spot. But if someone's trying to drive cars, you know, they're like mobile raiders, nomadic raiders, or whatever.
Probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's probably more likely the scenario. But, you know, that's where you've got to. Yeah, that's where you've got to either, in my opinion, you either show that you're already organized, or not, and let them be lured in a little bit deeper. Because my thought is one of the roads that we've got here is lined with pretty tall trees that could be easily cut down and made into barricades. Like right there, you just chop it down, it falls right in the road, it's barricaded. But if someone is coming down that road in a vehicle and they see that barricade, they're either going to turn around, or they're going to know that someone's there who's potentially organized, that probably has supplies, that they might decide, okay, let's hop out and start scouting. And they scout through the trees, and, you know, 20 feet or so, and, you know, they're in someone's backyard kind of thing, depending on where you knock the trees down.
Yes. Well, that's the saying that they didn't burn down during a forest fire that would break loose and not be covered.
Yeah.
Collapse. I mean, have you watched that show, Life After People, at all?
Yeah, I think I've seen that
History
one.
Channel? Well, that's a very good show. If you haven't seen it, there's 2 seasons, I believe, and there's there's an actual original documentary. This shows a spin-off of, and I recommend watching the documentary first. But it shows how long it takes for structures that we built in certain materials to vanish and decompose over time without even any influence from besides natural, like, this daily, you know, wear and tear. And pretty much, like, you know, a place like New York City, just to summarize all this, would pretty much just be a bunch of hills with creeks and iron deposits from all the metal that were in the buildings. So, like, you wouldn't even know there was a city there in like 1,000 years. It would just be a bunch of hills, you know, with granite slabs somewhere for all the granite that used to be around. And that's going to be eroded too. It only look like they used to when they first carved them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's going to the extreme, but pretty much what I was talking about, though, is like, during the first year of collapse, that's actually a pretty good show if you want to get an idea of what would happen if the whole grid goes down and a major collapse happens.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is there's going to be forest fires that will burn out of control or uncontrollable, and urban fires, too. Because the plumbing systems are all shot, and there's no pumps, and there's no firefighters. And it could change their environment heavily.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how, if you were in a city situation, how what kind of shelter. Because like whenever I drive through a city, it's like the first thing I think about is like a nuclear war. Okay, where do I go if I'm in this location and a nuke starts going off, kind of thing. It's like I'm pretty close to DC.
Well, a nuke goes off. You got nothing to worry about after that. It's already gone off.
Yeah.
Duck and cover, man. Duck and cover.
Just duck and cover.
Like where to run to or where to run into, so that when the fallout does start falling on you.
Well, it depends what kind of nuclear explosion it was.
Right.
If it was a ground or airburst. Airburst ones have the least amount of radiation. In fact, you probably won't even notice it. It probably won't affect any human health at all. But if there's a ground one that plunges to the ground, it will irradiate all that junk that it just blew up from the splash, of the explosion. And that will be all irradiated, and that will be all hazardous material, and it'll be bad, But airburst one, they'll just fry a few things, maybe start a few fires. But
yeah, I mean so like that whenever I go walk into a place, that's one of the things I think about. Like, oh, okay, so I've got a big parking garage here that's underground under this building. Let's go in there. That'd be a good spot. Or like when I lived in Indiana, we had
that's just like having attention to detail. It's just observing your surroundings, just in case scenarios. This is good to have. But I get what you're saying. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So like when I lived in Indiana, we had a big crypt in one of the churches. It was like massive concrete, and I was like, oh, that would be a good place to go, or something like that. It was very
for short term at least.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely short term shelters.
There's a lot of armchair survivalists. You think that they'll just sit in their own house for for eternity after that.
Yeah.
It's like they have a plan, right? They have plan A, and that's it.
Right.
They want a long-term plan? They don't even have a long-term plan. What's your long-term plan? You're just going to stay where you're at if shit does hit the fan?
Long-term, I probably, I'll stay where I'm at initially, I think, but chances are I probably would go elsewhere to other family members.
I wouldn't go to Canada.
No, it'd be pretty close by, I think. And I think that, short of a war, I think things that would probably try to stabilize or normalize reasonably quickly. I don't think that that things like that would last as long as people think.
Well,
but you never can tell.
Control. Well, history says otherwise. I mean, in history, societies have collapsed that way.
Right.
Big ones too.
But it's been a gradual kind of a thing. It's not like an immediate thing.
Well, no, it has been immediate. There have been civilizations that just vanished within a decade.
But see,
gone.
Decades, I guess, is pretty quick, but it's not like immediate, I mean, you can kind of see that the American Empire is coming to an end, and
it's not just the American Empire. The whole world, man. The world's current civilization of the world is going to go down.
You see that's yeah, but that the thing that when I hear that, it's like I wonder if that's been engineered that way, kind of thing, so that no one person is on top.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like in the past we had you had societies collapse, and then you had nations collapse, and then you had then you had major wars or continents just collapse like Europe and Asia, and now we're heading into the next sector where the whole world's all interconnected and it's all one massive membrane. And then if one continent collapses, it might take down the whole system. You might have a global collapse, and that's what we're in right now. Everything's so interconnected. All the trade, all the economics, all the food, all the technology, all the communications. Everything's just so mixed up and shuffled. If one of them goes, it could take everything else with a chain reaction, and especially a solar storm. Like, I don't know if you realize. Actually, I didn't even mention it. Like back in 2003, a solar storm then cost about almost $1 billion in damage to satellite sensors.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of wonder how much more activity we're going to get from the sun.
Well, we're going to get a lot more because we just had X2, and it's only January.
Yeah.
We're not even January 2013 yet. That's when it's supposed to begin. That's pretty scary.
Yep.
And the heat wave, that's probably coming next summer. It's probably going to be, maybe this summer. It's going to drive the droughts around the world, all the food shortages we already have. It's going to drive everything up. Everything's going to go to hell. But
yeah, I think it just all depends on being prepared, I guess, and being as self-reliant as possible, but not forgetting about your neighbors and helping them, and that kind of thing. So,
I mean, unless you're single and you're out in the middle of the desert, you're probably better off living like that. But if you have a family, you have to have a society. It's really hard to defend a family by yourself.
Right.
And that's why you have to have a family.
And I think that societies, it's always gravitated, back toward itself to some type of semblance of order. So it's just really, something that it always comes back around. It's like society never really ends. It's just a cycle. It comes and goes.
Yep. Well, all the ancients saw the world as cycles, and a lot of the cycles were like the Iron Age, the Golden Age, the Great Year, as they call it, and even the Mayans had it too, and other cultures. I mean,
right.
It goes back. They see human civilization as a cycle, like it has its ups and downs.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the Mayans, because that's supposed to be this year, right?
Winter solstice. If you go on the Naval Observatory, which is the timekeepers of the world, pretty much, they keep track of all the solstices, and the winter solstice and summer solstice, and, the furthest away, and they say, the Mayan calendar actually ends on winter solstice this year. But you go to the Naval Observatory website and tell you the exact minute it ends, and it's at 11:11, UTC. So
that's pretty interesting.
Something to think
of. Yeah.
All these people seeing the 11:11 phenomenon. It could be pointing to that. That could be the sign that, hey, this age is ending. We're about to transition to the next one. But the transition isn't an age. It's a period of chaos and darkness, which is something that all these New Agers want to ignore. They say it's the age of enlightenment. I was like, dude, they're in for a surprise. That's all I want to say.
Well, those of you that are listening, I think it's about time that we wrap up our show for this evening. I hope you enjoyed the show. We do have our contest still going. I've kind of held it up a little bit longer to get more entries, but we'll probably be transitioning to a poll pretty soon on our website of some of the names for the show. So if you've got some names, please submit them. We'd love to hear them and put them in. And we're actually giving away a prize for the winning entry. and that's going to be a med pack. It's a small, like car-sized med pack. It has it's pretty good size for it, and it's got some extra space to stick a couple extra things in there that it doesn't have too. So it's really good. So thanks for joining, and hopefully next week we'll probably have an extended episode on shelter next week as well. I'm still trying to line up another guest that I think that everyone will really enjoy listening to. His name's Bruce Beach. He runs the ARC2 project, and so he's been on a couple shows. I think he's scheduled to be on one of the National Geographic Doomsday Prepper episodes, and I haven't mentioned anything until now because I don't want to jinx it, because it's kind of hard to pin down sometimes. But I hope you enjoyed the show, and let's have a good night.